Gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Corner Office, checking in after one of the best weekends of sports that I can think of. Obviously, we had the first two rounds of the March Madness tournament. I'm sure if you're tagging along with the show, you were watching at least some of that just to see how poorly our bracket did. But that being said, Jack and I are back in the studio, very excited to update you guys on some of the things you might have missed and some more picks that we're going to have for the upcoming games. So, what's going on?
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining, to say the least.
Yeah,
first
for
week,
sure.
definitely didn't have the same upset capacity as last year.
Agreed.
But last year was definitely overwhelming in terms of all the higher seeded teams going down. So I think that this has been more of a typical March Madness, but we've still seen great upsets, great games. All four number one seeds are still in.
All four number two seeds are still in.
All four number two seeds are still in. So yes, there have been upsets, but there's also some great teams and some great games that are going to come down the stretch.
Some of the upsets, just to highlight from the first round, a lot of these teams did not replicate that magic going into the second round, where Yale beating Auburn, somebody that a lot of people had Auburn being a favorite sleeper to win the whole tournament,
including us.
SEC, including us. We thought they were really good this year. BYU beating Duquesne. I don't think a lot of people had BYU going super far, but Duquesne was not supposed to beat them.
Yeah, right.
Grand Canyon versus St. Mary's. That was one that we looked at and decided to go with St. Mary's on, but GCU really played well, and then they ran into did you watch the Alabama versus GCU game?
I did not know.
In the second round. It was one of the most just absurdly reckless displays of basketball I've ever seen. People were flying all over the place. You also had games like James Madison versus Wisconsin, which we picked.
It was a great game.
Both our brackets. We both picked James Madison, but then they got routed by Duke. And
it seems like that was besides number 1 beating a number 16, that was the biggest domination so far in this tournament in my eyes.
I agree. And I think that the one that everybody's talking about right now is just this Kentucky-Oakland one, where you have a new March Madness legend is born in Jack Golke, a guy who just throws the rock at the rim and prays that it goes in.
355 attempts on the year, 347 three-point attempts on the year.
Yeah, he only took 8 two-point shots.
I am interested in what those 8 two-point shots were. Do you think that they would leak out breakaway layups, or do you think that his foot was on the line? Or
I have no idea. Foot on the line is not a bad shout, honestly. And the only real upset team that has continued to have success is this NC State team that won the ACC championship.
Is that an upset? I mean, seeding wise, it's an upset,
right? But I think
they are a wagon right now, and they are rolling.
Yeah, we expected them and DJ Burns to continue to play up to that level. But as you said before, I mean, games have been really chalk this year. Having all 4 of the 1 seeds and all 4 of the 2 seeds in the Elite 8 is a rare thing. I think that all 4 of the 3 seeds are also in. Illinois is in the Sweet 16. Creighton is in the Sweet 16. Kentucky lost. Okay. And one more lost. Who else lost? Baylor. Baylor lost to Clemson. So that was another upset.
Baylor lost by a lot to Clemson.
Yeah, they lost badly.
Yeah.
It was a much closer game than the scoreboard showed. Jacoby Walter had 2 free throws to tie the game and was not able to convert either of them. But that being said, we have a lot of 1 matchups, a lot of 2 matchups going into the Sweet 16, and we could see a very chalk final here. Do you think that creates for better games or worse games in March? And is that more exciting? I feel like excitement is, why some people want to show up to watch the games, but ultimately having these great teams match up is probably going to make for better games in the long run.
Well, so I think that it's a mixed bag, right? Okay. We're coming off a season last year where the tournament was a free-for-all. We had a number 9 seed in the Final Four. We had, San Diego, a number 5 seed in the Final Four.
Yep.
And then we had 2 number 1s. And that made for great games, seemingly. They all went down to the wire, but number 1 UConn came out on top. So I think that part of the reason that people watch is because is there a word for spontaneability, how spontaneous the games can be in terms of winners and
unpredictable, I guess you could
definitely say. That's what I'm looking for. The unpredictability of the result at the end of the game is partially why people watch.
I agree.
And for it to be a more chalk year, I don't necessarily think it makes the games more exciting. I just think that it is definitely something different than what we've seen in the past couple of seasons.
I agree.
But I think that there's benefits to both a super chalk year and a super not chalk year.
Yeah. I would say that I think that the tournament overall probably benefits from some of these schools going on long runs. But we've seen some really one-sided national championship games in the past couple of years. And I do think that, like last year, like UConn beat every team they played by double digits. Every team they played. So, like, although like the tournament itself was fun to get to that point in the national championship, like there was nobody who was going to compete with that UConn team.
You're right.
Now you have 4 1 seeds in contention for a national title in the Sweet 16. And they match up better with each other because they have been at the top of college basketball for all year. And same with those two
but in March, your seedings don't necessarily matter when it becomes game time. It doesn't mean anything. I think that what really means the most is who's hotter at the time and who's playing better basketball. So we saw this weekend, we've already talked about the Baylor-Clemson game. Baylor all season has been the better team, and Clemson has been inconsistent, but they have showed up their last 2 games ready to play, and they seem like one of the hotter teams in this tournament.
I agree.
You could say the same about NC State. You could say the same about JMU. We look at them, and their number seeding might be a little lower, but I think that the broad majority of people look at them and say, okay, I think that they're the favorite to win this game because of the way that they're playing, and that's what it comes down to.
All right, so is there a team in the Sweet 16 aside from, obviously, I think you picked Houston, I picked UConn for the national champion at the beginning of the tournament. Is there a team thus far in the Sweet 16 that you've looked at and you've gone, wow, they are much better than the competition thus far?
I look at Creighton, and we talked about them last week.
Yeah.
I've liked the way that they've played a lot. I think that beating that Oregon team was huge for them. Obviously, in my opinion, game of the tournament so far. Went to double overtime against Oregon. The scores were, real close to the 100s. And for me, it shows that they can win big games. They have guys who can make big shots, and they have enough scores where if their number 1 guy or number 2 guy isn't available, their number 3 guy will step up and make the shot, or their number 4 guy will step up and make the shot. So I've been impressed by Creighton, and that was not a bad Oregon team that they beat.
I agree. Another one of those teams who was hot coming into the tournament.
I understand that Cousinard and Dante had literally all but one of their points in the second half and overtime, but that's a good Oregon team, and they stuck together and they won. I like the way the Creighton looks so far.
I agree. I've obviously been on the Creighton train this entire season, and especially in March, I really love when I get to pick a team like that and I get to root for a team like that. For me thus far, I think the best team in the tournament has been UConn. I picked them to win the tournament, and it makes sense that I'm going to continue to back them. But like as Dan Hurley said in his post game with his team, he's like, keep blowing teams out of the tournament. They're not here to mess around. You know what I mean? They're winning games by double-digit points every time. When they make mistakes in games, even like against that Stetson team that they played in the first round, they're getting ripped for it. Like, this is a team with a national championship caliber coach and with national championship caliber players. And I think that they've continued to showcase that throughout the first 2 rounds of the tournament. I also think a lot of people picked Purdue to go out early because of their old tournament history, but Zach Edey has looked unstoppable. This team with good guard play from Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith has been a lot better this year. They're not freshmen anymore. They have another whole season under their belt. And although it's a little chalky, as we said, to have the 1 and 2 teams be your favorites when it goes into the Sweet 16, I think these 2 teams have been the most impressive.
I also think that Purdue has one of the easier routes to the Final Four out of the 1 seeds or the favorite.
Yeah, but they dismantled a Utah State team that was supposed to be pretty damn good.
They did, but they let them hang around. I think that what impressed me the most about Purdue was Purdue let Utah State hang around for the first 14, 15 minutes of the game, and then made the adjustments that they had to in order to go into that next gear and next level, and they ended up building their lead to 30 points and whatnot. But I think that was showed to me something like a layer to their game that they haven't been able to do in the past, which is adapt to what the opposition is giving them and turn it into success for themselves. And that is what impressed me. with Purdue so far.
I mean, look, if you're going to continue to double the post against Purdue, which you have to do when Zach Edey is down there and their shooters are making shots, they're pretty much the most unstoppable offense in the country. Is there a team thus far that has not impressed you, that has gotten all the way to the Sweet 16?
I know that I did pick this team to win the national championship, and I will be rooting against them on Friday, but I was not impressed with the way that Houston played last Sunday, I believe that they played.
A&M.
Yep. I understand. A&M's a good team. They have a great number one option, a great number two option, and I knew that this game was going to be close, but I don't like the way that Houston handled things down the stretch. And yes, I will give that kid credit who came in. I don't know his name. Who came in? Free throw? Yeah, with 40 seconds left and went to the line and made a free throw after having shot only 4 all season. Mm-hmm. That shows depth. It shows good coaching. But on that same token, I didn't think that they played well. And going against a Duke team that's riding high has proven that they have a very deep offense and that they are firing on all cylinders right now. I think that this Houston team is on their heels a little bit.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. I think that the A&M matchup for Houston was a very interesting one because that's one of the fastest offenses in the country, led by Wade Taylor and some really great players against one of the best defenses in the country. And, when you get to those overtime periods, you're going to have players foul out. So like a guy like Jamal Shed, the Big 12 Player of the Year, fouling out is not great.
Well, they had 4 players foul out, and it's the first time that a team has had 4 players foul out and still win a game since 1987.
But they stuck together, like we said, and I mean, I do agree that I don't think that they have been the team that I was expecting them to be thus far, but I don't know if they necessarily have been super disappointing.
I wouldn't call them disappointing because you can't call a team that's made it this far disappointing.
Agreed.
I don't think that any of these 16 teams have disappointed. I'm just saying out of those teams, I was basing it more off of which team is not as excited, like which team has to do the most preparing before their next game. And I do think that is Houston.
Okay. My pick for that under those guidelines would then be Marquette. They played 2 actually very close games in their first round against Western Kentucky, and they left that Colorado team around way too long in their second round game after going up big.
Colorado was hot, though.
Yeah, but they also now have to play a very hot NC State team going into the round of 16 here. And I don't know how they're going to guard DJ Burns. I mean, the way that NC State played against Oakland zone the other night is indicative of the fact that they can break that. And I just think that this Marquette team hasn't been great in the tournament for the past couple of years. And I'm interested to see how they do come the next couple rounds.
I think that a player that I have, I understand that they are so far the Cinderella story of the tournament. Yeah. I've expected more coming out of DJ Horn and NC State, and I think that they still have a layer of offense that hasn't hit yet. Okay. And once they fire into that last cylinder, I mean, right now they're hot enough to be a legitimate threat to be a Elite 8 Final Four team.
I agree.
And the way that Marquette has played this tournament has not been inspiring.
It's not been, inspiring. Yeah,
I think that they are at upset watch. We'll put them on upset watch.
All right, cool. On the subject of disappointment, we're going to kick it back to the round of 64 here. I think the narrative right now around Kentucky basketball is that they have been disappointing in the tournament for the past 4 or 5 years even. They're 1-3 in their last 4 tournament appearances, and they missed the tournament 2 years ago. Do you think that a guy like John Calipari is going to be on the hot seat after a season like this?
Well, again, you look at those past 3 seasons, right? Last year, they don't make the tournament.
Yeah.
With the National Player of the Year.
Yep.
2 years ago, they make the tournament as a 2 seed and lose to 15 seed St. Peter's. It's just not the production that Calipari is expected to have at that Kentucky team. And I agree. One of my friends said it to me best this week. He said, Cal is a great recruiter. He is a mediocre coach when it comes to the tournament. And that has proven to be true. Mm-hmm. And historically, I think that he's a good coach, but I think that it is more so his recruiting. And I think that as a Kentucky fan, you have no choice but to be disappointed in Cal and this entire program. I don't know if I would say that I'm ready to move on from him yet because, again, he is one of the best recruiters in the country.
Mm.
He has brought in a lineup that, I mean, historically, now they have lost enough draft stock in my mind that most of them will stick around.
Really?
And
you think the guys from this year will stick around?
I mean, obviously, every team loses their star players, but I think that the key to maintaining success in college basketball is keeping the glue guys.
Okay.
I think that they will keep a lot of those glue guys around.
Okay. Because I think you lose Shepard this year, you lose Dillingham this year, you lose Antonio Reeves this year at the minimum. I think you lose Justin Edwards too. I think you lose all 4 of those guys.
I think that you definitely lose those 3.
Okay.
And I know that they have a lot coming in the next recruiting class, but
yep.
If the question is whether or not I think he deserves to be fired, the answer is no. Cal's one of those coaches where it'll never be a firing. It'll be like a mutual stepping down or a parting of ways.
Yep.
But I just don't think that it's time to get rid of Cal. I think that would be premature.
I don't disagree. I think the reason that Cal will be sticking around is because of his contract. He has a lifetime contract with Kentucky, which would mean that they would have to pay him like a $30 million buyout if he was to leave the program. It's too much money. It's too much money to pay a guy who has given you some form of success every season for the past few seasons, even though they haven't been able to crack into the tournament. But I think the biggest question when it comes to a guy like Cal right now, with the environment of the transfer portal and the environment of these COVID seniors and these 5th years and whatnot, is the era of the one and done over?
I mean, I think it's hard to say, right? You look at guys in the NBA now from the previous draft class, and they seem to have no problem making the transition. You look at Victor Wembanyama, who never even played in college and is roughly the same age as you and I.
Yeah.
And he's translated perfectly to the NBA. You look at Paolo Banchero, one and done, number 1 overall pick, translated perfect to the NBA, in my opinion. My answer to your question is no. I don't think that the one and done era is gone, but I think that more players will continue to stick around if they haven't had any form of success in college. Even if that is an Elite 8 or a Final 4. Last year, I know that Duke, we saw Kyle Filipowski stay around. We saw
Tyrese Proctor
stayed. They really maintained almost everyone besides Dariq Whitehead and Derek Lively.
Yep.
And that's just from a fan's perspective. I do think that more guys will continue to stay around, but in terms of that upper echelon players, that 1A group of players, no, I don't think that the era is done.
Yeah, I wonder if the question of I think players will continue to go to college and they will continue to leave after 1 year. I think that's indicative of the system. Like, people want to go to the NBA. If you have enough talent to, you should be able to. But I think that more so the nail on the head issue there is it indicative to winning, right? Because the last time that John Calipari won a national championship was 2011, and he's the guy who perpetuated the whole, one and done era, I think was brought by Kentucky. And the last time that system that I can think was super successful was with that 2015 Kentucky team that was undefeated until they matched up with Wisconsin in the Final Four when Duke won the national championship. We saw
Frank Kaminsky was a one and done, I believe. From that Kentucky team, Karl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley-Stein, Devin Booker, all those guys were one and done, and they've all translated. I mean, but with the exception of Willie Cauley-Stein, those Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker are both all-stars this year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's about translation to the NBA as much as it is about collegiate success, because I think that there is no argument to be made that, like, there are players who have played 1 year in college and are ready to play in the NBA.
Yeah, no, I think that it isn't necessarily a direct correlation between NBA or college success and NBA success. I think that it's a mixed bag, right? It has to do with, are you NBA ready at the NCAA level? But it also, comes into play with what team do you get drafted to? Do you fit in their system? Do they have the right coaching that'll develop you? I think we look at a guy like Jordan Hawkins, who was a one and done last year at UConn, won the national championship.
He was actually a second-year player. He played 2 years.
Oh, he was?
Yep.
Well, I guess that kind of invalidates my argument, but he has stepped into the NBA and hasn't quite found his role yet. You look at Grady Dick. He was a first-year player at Kansas last year.
Yep,
Kansas was a very good team. You look at him, he is starting to find his place in Toronto, but it did take a while for him to translate to the league.
I
So
agree.
I think that it has to be a perfect storm in order to directly slide into that league-ready superstar role.
I agree. I think on the collegiate level, on the collegiate success level, once this COVID era is moved us by, and there are players like Rob Dillingham, who's 18 years old, matching up against a guy like Cormac Ryan, for example, who's 24.
25.
Like, once that era is out of college basketball, I think you will see there be an evening out of some of these good teams with experienced players still matching up well against these teams with really talented players. But I think that the age difference between the people who have had this COVID year and the extra year of eligibility and the waiver and whatnot is causing a bit of a disparity.
So let me ask you, do you think that is good for the game?
What, having fifth years?
Having fifth years, having guys who are 25 years old.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's going away. It's going away, right? Like next year is the last year that COVID years will be eligible. That's it. So the fifth year senior ideal is gone. It's not going to be an issue anymore. So like maybe I would say that it's probably not the best thing in the world. Just because you have guys who are old playing collegiate athletics.
Yeah.
But that being said, like that's it makes sense because these guys lost a year of eligibility. So why shouldn't they be eligible to play? You know what I mean? Due to COVID.
Right. I think it makes sense, but I do tend to agree that I don't think it's the best for the actual game.
Okay. But that being said, I mean, you also have like programs like the G League Ignite and like
which is going away.
Correct. That's what I was going to get to. And like you have these types of programs who were supposed to be able to combat the one and done era, and they're not being successful, right? Like they haven't found success. Some of them are shutting down. Overtime Elite also has not found that niche, aside from guys like Asar and Amen Thompson, who are probably going to be the only outliers to the system when it comes to that. And two guys who also have not yet found their direct role in the NBA. To your point earlier, I think a lot of people still see 1 year of collegiate basketball as being the best route to get to the NBA, to improve your draft stock, to do all these things. So although like I think the system right now isn't working for collegiate success when it comes to the national stage, because a lot of these kids aren't ready yet when it comes to like being a collegiate athlete. It's not going to affect the NBA in any way. But I also think that the system is going to change once these COVID seniors graduate and once we get back to the normalcy of what college basketball normally is.
So to wrap that up, I believe that end this episode up. I will agree. I do still think that there is a place for one and done. Just like expanding further on it. I've been sitting here thinking about your question, and I think it has a lot to do with, I don't think that success has a lot to do with the way that your stock increases or decreases. You look at guys who have been one and dones, even just look at Jason Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he was missing that element of being in big moments, not having been far in the national championship for multiple years, right? He goes into Boston. He doesn't necessarily perform at his best in those first playoff runs. Which is why it's taken him. He has these hefty expectations weighted on him where like it's time to do something in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think that for him and Jaylen Brown and for guys across the league, they don't perform well in their first couple of playoff seasons. Like look at this Oklahoma City Thunder team. They're not going to perform well, in my opinion, because they have so many guys who weren't really in those big stages for multiple years.
Well, their average age is like 22
and could be comfortable.
Yeah.
In big moments.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is the biggest issue with the one and done. So I think that guys will find success in the NBA until those big moments come in. It does take a while it is a learning curve for guys to learn how to be in those big moments, for sure.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think the one and done is going away anytime soon. And I think the question of success is going to be really indicative of the next couple of years and seeing what these teams who continue to keep their players on board for multiple years can do, and what teams who continue to cycle every year get. Because it hasn't been successful for the past couple of years. Will it make a comeback? I don't know. And I'm excited to see.
We will see.
I'm excited to see. So I got a little draft for you, if you don't mind me throwing this at you for nothing. We like to do blind rankings here on the Corner Office Pod sometimes, and today, I mean, it feels fitting that we would ask about March Madness legends, some guys who historically have made massive runs or done something spectacular within March. So I have a list of 5 March Madness legends from the past 15 years. Are you ready to hear them?
Yeah, let's blind rank them.
All right, cool. There is a bit of a disparity between like NBA success and whatnot. You can apply that if you want to. I probably wouldn't.
I think I'm just going to apply it based on NCAA.
Okay, and I'll give you a little hint before we start. Only one of these guys did not make the Elite Eight.
Okay.
That's all there is.
All right.
So I'm going to start you off with March Madness legend number 1, Johnny Juzang.
Johnny Juzang, UCLA, Tiger Campbell, COVID year. I'm going to throw him at 4. I don't think that they were necessarily like a wagon. I don't think that Johnny, I think that his draft stock was okay, but I don't think that people were like, Johnny Juzang is the only guy we have to worry about on this team. So I'm going to put him at 4.
Okay. I don't hate that pick. Obviously led them to the Final Four in a spectacular game against Gonzaga, ended their run, but really fun player to watch in March. Number 2, CJ McCollum.
This one hurts a little bit as a Duke fan. I believe he played for Lehigh.
Yes.
Beat our team. That was my first year of being a Duke fan. I'm going to throw him at 3. He had a hell of a game against Duke.
Agreed. The 15-2 upset of Lehigh and Duke will go down in history. CJ McCollum, obviously, the leader of that one. This one's a bit near and dear to you and I. I'm going to throw you Marquise Noel.
Oh, Marquise Noel. Really, if we're just going based off pure legends, guys who just like lit a tournament on fire, I'm putting him at 2. He really did light last year's tournament on fire.
Okay.
And for the past year, I've been seeing the clips of him faking the timeout and then whipping the ball for the lob pass. Yeah, no, I thought that he was awesome to watch. I'm going to put him at 2.
I agree. I think that's a great pick.
That's a great pull from you.
Thank you. Number 4 here, we got Jordan Poole.
Yeah, I don't know about that Michigan team. Jordan Poole was nice, but I think he's going to fit in at my 5. I do hate leaving. I hate leaving the number 1 seed for last because it's an entire gamble, but I guess we'll coin flip it. Give me my number 1 seed.
I think you're going to be very happy with that. Your number 1 seed is going to be Kemba Walker today.
Yeah, Kemba Walker's that number 1.
Yeah.
With that UConn team.
Yeah, you nailed that.
I kind of nailed that list.
You kind of nailed that.
We've been really good with our blind rankings. I don't know if we've missed yet.
We've been really hot. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all I got for you today, unless you got something to pull out of the hat here.
No.
All right.
That was a pretty good list of random, like a good number of. I was expecting like an Adam Morrison or
yeah.
You know, guys
someone
like
too
that,
basic. No,
way too basic. But you did a good job mixing that up.
A little bit.
I think that's a pretty good note to end this episode on, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back with coverage of the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 rounds. And until next time, this has been the Corner Office. I'm Jack Burton.
And I'm Alex Penders.
Corner 3.